Folks, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers introduced their new offensive coordinator today as Dave Canales took the podium and answered some questions about him joining the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We're going to be having some takeaways and kind of our thoughts and opinions on that press conference. Joining me, as always, is my friend Evan Wanish of BucsNation.com, the co-host of the Cannon Fire podcast and the main host of the Real to Real podcast. Evan, initial thoughts on Dave Canales' press conference today?
Yeah, a confident guy, a guy who I think is, you can tell he's energetic. I mean, I think that sort of bleeds through. You can tell in the way he talks and everything, and that he's a guy who is confident in his abilities and has a lot of energy. And really, my biggest takeaway, and we'll get into a couple other things that was said, but my biggest takeaway is pretty much what I think most people assumed, and that was that they're going to try and run the ball a lot more in 2023, and obviously and do it successfully. He even noted that you know they're going to try to run the ball, but if running the ball isn't working, they're going to have to pass. And I do think that they're going to put an extra emphasis on running the ball successfully and attacking a defense in more ways than just one, which at times the Buccaneers last year got a little too one dimensional and a little too pass heavy. And I think that's what Canales is going to set out to do here for this upcoming season.
Yeah, I think that there was a lot of different interesting things from this press conference, and there was some stuff that kind of give not cookie cutter answers, but talks about some offensive coordinators he's worked with in the past. He talked about all the guys that he's worked with and how he picked different things from them. And he also talked about some other stuff with the interview process with Bowles and Jason Light and how that was overall pretty good. He's also spent, of course, a lot of time with Pete Carroll in Seattle and a little bit with USC as well. So that was interesting. But overall, like you said, I think the guy's a pretty confident guy. He definitely feels like a guy who's been waiting for an opportunity like this and is a guy that definitely is going to give it his all and not make it too difficult. I think that was another thing that I think was a big takeaway from this was there isn't going to be a ton of execution complexity with this scheme, but there are definitely going to be some creative and innovative ways for this offense and how they're going to confuse defenses. Was that a big takeaway that you got from this press conference?
Yeah, and you hear him talk about, it being complex, but also being simple to execute, but being complex to sort of stop.
Right.
And obviously, that's the ideal offense for anybody. That's not, anything groundbreaking that he's doing. But I do think that it's just sort of a breath of fresh air, And I think a lot of people grew frustrated over the years with Byron Leftwich's press conferences and some of the answers he would give. And hearing Canales talk, kind of a more modern take, per se, on how to approach things and not be so one dimensional and really helping out your players, not relying on the players' talent to do all the work, but also having the scheme that fits around those players. So I think, I think if you have one thing of real hope, for this Buccaneers team in 2023 and for Canales is that hopefully, I mean, first test he passed, with the words and everything. Now, obviously, you got to actually do it. Like actions speak louder than words, but in terms of how he talked about the scheme and being able to help, players in that scheme and have players fit the system. And he mentioned the word system a lot as well. That to me was very telling as well.
Yeah, and I think that that's a big thing, right? You talked about execution. It's going to be easy to execute. And I feel like for so long we heard that the previous offense with Byron Leftwich and even Bruce Arians, it was a hard offense to execute. It asked a lot of its players. And if this is a genuine change that is going to happen where it's an offense that might not ask as much of their guys, I think that that's going to help out a lot, Evan. Is that kind of a similar thought process that you have here?
Yeah, I mean, he mentioned some of the personnel. I mean, he consistently mentioned Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. I mean, that was two players that he mentioned consistently. There was a question about, since Chris Godwin was in the slot for most of Bruce Arians' offense, was Chris Godwin going to be sort of on the outside? And I think he didn't necessarily say, um, yeah, he didn't necessarily say it, but he kind of indicated. I think Chris Godwin is going to be more on the outside this coming season. I don't think you're going to see him in the slot as consistently as you did. But yeah, I mean, he talked about getting those guys the ball and being able to help them as much as possible. Obviously, talked about the quarterbacks a little bit. You know, didn't really talk about, I say quarterback because he kept mentioning, what you have right now is what you have. Like, who's on your team is what you have. And obviously, Kyle Trask is the only quarterback under contract right now. So he talked about Trask and just how things may fit with that, make it a little bit easier with Trask. But yeah, it was, like I said, it's just a breath of fresh air to hear someone. And like I said, he's got to go out and do it. Like, you can say all the right things, but if you don't do it, it doesn't really matter. But it was definitely nice to hear someone sort of have a new approach. And I think this coming fall, you're going to see, definitely going to see a different approach to this Bucs offense, both scheme wise as well as play calling wise. And Canales even said, like, play calling is like the not even the hardest part of the job. He said it's about the culture, and I think that's what the Buccaneers are trying to establish now. So I can really see why Todd Bowles, after the interview process, why Bowles sort of really gravitated towards this guy.
And one thing I want to say too is you did mention that he did talk about Kyle Trask, and of course he can't say anything too in depth. He said he liked Trask coming out of college, but one thing that he said, which I think doesn't just apply to Trask, but any quarterback the Buccaneers have, and that's they're not going to put him in harm's way in a lot of situations unless they have to throw the football a little bit more. And that was pretty interesting for me to see in terms of the press conference and whatnot, because that leans in the idea of, hey, we're going to take it easy on our quarterback. I'm not going to say it's going to be exactly like what, say, maybe a team like the San Francisco 49ers do, or what the LA Rams do with Matthew Stafford. But if we do see more of those situations where the quarterback doesn't have to throw as many risk type passes, I think that that's going to be a really interesting thing to see. And like you said, Evan, really just inject more of what it means to have a current NFL offense. Is that kind of a similar expectation in your mind, where it isn't going to be a situation where a quarterback isn't going to be passing 35, 40 times? And look, folks, I understand that this is a passing league, but at the end of the day, Todd Bowles wants more balance, and it seems like that is kind of what Dave Canales was preaching here a little bit, and also having his quarterback make more of safer throws. Evan, is that some takeaways you got from that as well?
Yeah, and it is a passing league, and don't get me wrong, Dave Canales and Todd Bowles, they both know that. Like, they both know that. So, yeah, I don't think this is going to be a sign where, oh, they're going to be running the ball 35, 40 times a game and ignore the pass. No, not necessarily. But I found it interesting, when he's talking about Trask. And I think he was talking about Trask, well, like you said, I think this can apply to any quarterback as well. Said he wanted to be like the point guard, wanted him to distribute instead of do it all. And the Bucs' last scheme, while Bruce Arians, he was the quarterback whisperer and his offense has had a lot of success in his NFL career, it put a lot on the quarterbacks. And there's a reason why there are so many quarterbacks with such high interception numbers in his offense, is because it puts a lot of stress on the quarterbacks to play really well. And I think what Canales and Bowles, I'm sure, recognize is that, look, like, they're not going to have as good of a quarterback this year, whether it's Kyle Trask, whether it's Jacoby Brissett, Baker Mayfield, even like a Drew Lock or a rookie. Like, they're not going to have as good of a quarterback this year as they did last year. So they're going to have to make things easier on them. And I think that's one way. So I found the basketball sort of comparison very interesting, that The point guard is the guy who is going to make everything flow, right? Is not going to do it all, but is going to make everything flow. Get the balls to the playmakers. Get it to Mike Evans. Get it to Chris Godwin. Get it to Rashad White. Whoever else they may add, whether Russell Gage, you mentioned, Kate Otten's there and everything. So get the ball to the playmakers and let them go to work. Don't have it all be on Kyle Trask or whoever the quarterback is. Don't let it all be on their shoulders.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. And look, I mean, there's going to be a lot more to dive into regarding this press conference, specifically with like some more specific answers that he gave regarding Rashad White and some of the other players at wide receiver, like you said, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, and all these other different types of things. We'll probably be making separate videos talking about some more of those specific answers. But Evan, for me, and I want to hear your final thoughts on this, for me, I saw that press conference and heard it and whatnot, and I came away very impressed. I came away thinking, wow, I think that we're definitely going to be seeing a lot more of a modernized offense, and not to knock, at the end of the day, hey, Buccaneers' old style of offense, it got them 2 NFC South championships, it got them a Super Bowl win, but I feel like we're definitely going to see a lot more balanced of an offensive approach, and definitely, in my opinion, a lot more of a closer style to what you see with some of those West Coast teams, like the 49ers, like obviously the Seahawks, and like the LA Rams. Is that kind of some of your final takeaways, or maybe there's even more so there? What were your final takeaways from this Dave Canales press conference? And I also came away very impressed by the guy as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard not to be come away impressed. Because like the way he speaks, like I said, he spoke with that confidence and it's gonna sound kind of dumb, but like he knew what he was doing. He knows what to do. He has a vision for what he wants out of the offense, and just like you said, sort of a I keep coming back, this breath of fresh air. It's a modernized take. And I think now the Buccaneers might finally have a modernized offense. Look, the Bruce Arians offense, it worked. Like it did work. But at the end of the day, it was an older offense. It relied solely on team skill rather than scheme and getting the most out of players by the scheme, not necessarily their talent. So that can only work for so long, and it finally started to become stale once you don't have as much talent around you anymore, as the Buccaneers didn't in 2022, and they're likely going to have even less in 2023. So, I think my final takeaway is that obviously, you can't say, oh, this was the right hire, wrong hire. That's going to be decided this season. Like that's going to be decided when they start playing games and everything. But I think you can see why not only the Bucs but also the Baltimore Ravens. You can see why organizations like this guy. You can see why he had the respect of the Seattle organization as well. And I think given their circumstances with not being the most attractive job, I think they did a nice job and found a pretty nice solution here, and hopefully it works out because, for Todd Bowles' sake, for Dave Canales' sake, because they do seem like confident guys. It's just smart football guys. So we'll see what happens, but overall, I mean, a pretty nice opening impression for Canales here.
Well, folks, again, we'll probably dive a little bit deeper into some of these topics later on down the line regarding some more of the specific answers that Dave Canales gave. But all in all, hey, not a bad start here for the Buccaneers' new offensive coordinator. Let us know your thoughts and opinions about the press conference down in the comments section below, and some of the things that we talked about that Dave Canales spoke on in this video as well. Would love to hear your thoughts and opinions about it, about a more balanced offense, about a more modernized offense here for the Buccaneers, and everything in between. Would love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions. Go check out Evan's work over at BucsNation.com. Also over at the Cannon Fire podcast. They finally decided to start uploading again, and the Reel to Reel podcast as well, where I am a part of it as well. But again, folks, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Hope y'all enjoyed. And as always, folks, we will see you all in the next video or the next live stream. But until then, and as always, guys, goodbye for now, and go Bucs.